Hello, everybody. This is Dane Jr. with the Standing Back Up podcast. Hope everyone's doing well today. I come across a story yesterday that's interesting to me. It's about a guy who spent 22 and a half years on death row. His name is Paul House, but let's talk about what happened, how all this come about. In 1985, July 13th, 1985, a young mother named Carolyn Muncie, she had two children. She went missing from her home one night. Um, the next day, her body was found less than 100 yards from her house. Um, and they said almost immediately they started questioning this Paul House guy. Now, at this time, he was 24 years old, was from Utah. Now, he had already been to prison for two violent assaults on women. That was his history. So he was kind of the new sex offender in town, let's say. Um, And so they go and they start questioning him. And immediately he tried to get his girlfriend to lie for him. That was the first thing. And say that he was home all night. When in fact, she said he left and came back and he didn't have no clothes on. And said that he told her that he had been mugged. Okay. So he had a little camper apparently. And they go there and they're searching it and they find a pair of pants that uh, have a lot of brown stains on them and stuff. And they don't at the time really don't know what they are, but they also had a bunch of dirt and stuff caked on them as well. And so they take that into evidence. And after examining her body, it appeared that she had been raped and murdered. So she had semen in her underwear. So he goes on trial, and the it happens within less than a year. He goes on trial. And I think they said it took a jury um, 4 hours or something to convict him, and he got the death penalty immediately. Now, his case gets off to a shaky start from the beginning, meaning the death penalty part, because something in the court clerk's work was wrong, and he immediately goes in and goes on to death watch. That means that your time, 48 hours before your execution date, they will move you to what's called the death house. So you go on watch because they consider you to be suicidal or whatever. So you go up there where you got somebody watching you at all times. And so um, he became within, I think they said 72 hours of his death, but his mother had figured it out, and so she kind of sounded the alarm or whatever that this was going on. And so um, now Carolyn's husband, his name was William Muncie. Now the night that it happened, he also tried to get someone to lie for him and say he was with them or something when in fact he wasn't. Um, Paul House had became friends with these two um, at some kind of little dance or something, some kind of I don't know what it was, some kind of little get together. I think it's a very very small town where they was at, Luttrell, Tennessee. It's up by Union City. So um, then what something? Oh, and then so time goes on, and he's on death row, and his mother says that she's working two and sometimes even three jobs to support the two of them. Um, so and she's driving up there to see him like every weekend or whatever, and it's taking all she can do to drive the 4 hours or whatever it was. I think it was 4 hours, and so but she's never given up. She's trying to get his case reheard again and get it in all these different courts, and they're having none of it basically in the state and all that stuff. Um, Now it finally gets turned over to the federal level. When this happens, um, he gets a new attorney. They call it something different in the feds. It's something, but either way, he's basically a court appointed attorney, and so he immediately finds something wrong in the case with the blood on the jeans. They test it and come to find out, yes, it was her blood, but it was put on his jeans after she had already passed away. Now, his genes and some vials of her blood were in transport to the FBI crime lab, and when the vials got there, several of them were empty. So they don't know if it was foul play or what. Now, the next thing that happens is DNA testing. So the semen gets tested because in '85 they didn't have all that. So it's come a long way now. This was in like 2002 or three when the testing starts getting better. '98 was the first thing I think, but and so that comes back as her husband's. So it's not even his. And so immediately this Paul House guy, his attorney, starts saying, "Hey man, you know, you have no case now because your whole case was rape and murder, and now she was not raped." And so um, he digs in it. Now, also, he finds out that her husband, William Muncie, told two people after Paul House and got convicted and got the death penalty that he did it, that William himself did it, and he had to get rid of the body. It was an accident, but he had to get rid of the body um, so he wouldn't get charged with murder. Now, um, time goes on, and they still are like, no, no, man, that ain't enough to overturn it. And so finally, in a big court, in federal court, they come back and said, no, yeah, you got to, and ordered the lower court to have a new trial. Well, at this time, the hair, she had hair in her hands and she had blood under her fingernails. And so more testing is done. The hair is not his, and the blood under her fingernails is not his either. And now, by this time, this Paul House guy has already got multiple sclerosis, and he is in a wheelchair. He's wheelchair bound. They said he weighed about 140 pounds, so he's lost any kind of whatever in his life. He can't walk. He can't do anything. Um, and one reporter said that he told them that he figured he would just die in there. But finally, after all that, everything with the hair and everything, the DA finally said he was dropping charges and not pursuing it any further. However, he did go on to say that he still feels that Paul House had something to do with it. He just couldn't connect the dots, and that's what he was trying to do. So I want to know what all y'all's take on this would be, because I've got my own take on it from the moment the moment that I read it. And so this is kind of a questions and answer episode, if you will. Um, and what I mean by that is, so the first thing that I got from this story was the first it stuck out to me was he was a sex offender. So he had apparently done this. And what they don't say what, and I can't find anything about it. Maybe someone else can, but I looked and I couldn't find it. But the DA in Knoxville said that he had a record of violent attacks on women already. So one can say, well, maybe he did go to prison and was on death row for 22 and a half years, but, maybe he got a little bit too early on them other two women, and maybe that's just kind of a whatever paying him back kind of deal. Or we could say that, yeah, he did it. Um, Either way, I too, I believe that he was involved. I definitely believe I believe the husband was involved and got him to help him get rid of the body. But now, after 22 and a half years, would that Paul House guy come forward and say, hey, man, here's what really happened? Or would he still be sitting there going, no, because if I do that, they're going to give me life without, and I ain't never going to get out. So he wouldn't do that either. Now, his poor old mama, last of the story I know, I don't know if he's even still around or not because it's been a few years ago now, but his poor old mama was still right there, picked him up and took him home, and she was taking care of him. Always swore and believed that he was innocent. And one part of the story there, she says that throughout all them times, and when she'd go and see him and do all that, there was one time and she told him, hey, Paul, I've been praying for you. And he said, don't you mention God to me. If there's a God, I wouldn't be in here. and then said throughout it all, I think after he got the first good news about the DNA test and all that, I think he said then that he believed in God and found Him. You know, I'm not going to judge the fella, but here's what I'm going to say about all of it. I believe if he would have got back out and he wasn't in a wheelchair, that another woman would have gone missing or something of that effect. That's my opinion. So if anybody wants to say, well, you know that, well, some bad things seem to happen when he was around women. So maybe it was I don't wish nothing bad on nobody, but people hurt women or children. It's just kind of not a good thing. So apparently that case is still unsolved, y'all. By the way, it happened July 13th, 1985. Last I saw of it. But I think any of us are sitting here and listening to it and could say, well, hell, that's easy to figure out. The husband did it. Yeah, I believe he did too. And I believe this other fellow was involved in it. They just didn't have no way to go any further with it. And it happened so long ago now, who knows. And I tried to find the William Muncie. I couldn't find anything about him online either. So I don't even know if he's still alive. You could probably go down that little county or something like that and look up at some old newspaper reports or something maybe, but I couldn't find anything else about him. Well, all right, y'all, that's the story for today. It started with Brushy Mountain, by the way. And just a little side note for y'all, if you don't know, they said that an estimated 10,000 men died at Brushy Mountain State Prison in the time that it was open. Just something to think about. Y'all have a good day. God bless and stay sober. That's what